Well, good day. Welcome to another recording to open up the parish vision for St. Joseph the Worker. I've done several videos that stem from ultimately from our Faith and Food Supper series on the joy of the gospel and all those dialogues that we had and all the work that the parish council did subsequently to collate all of that and flush it out and name our priorities. We came to the conclusion, of course, that we are called from our baptism to live the gospel, and from that we derived three priorities, of which I've already spoken in three different videos: inclusive community, faith formation, and social justice. Now, when you see the Venn diagram, you will see that there's three little triangles there that you might wonder what those are all about. They are sacrament, service, and Franciscan. Well, these are our roots, our foundations. I call them our foundations, or our roots, our foundations. Uh, Sacrament, service, and Franciscan. These are what we are, whether we like it or not. And in some ways, at least two of three of those aspects, we are those by virtue of being a parish, by being a parish community. And so I'll open up all that now because I think it's important for us to understand where we come from. These things that we can't change about ourselves. We didn't actually target these foundations in our process, but they were kind of things that became evident once we named our priorities, once we realized that we are called to live the gospel, and beyond that, we have priorities of which I've named. Okay, so the whole idea of being a sacramental community, well, we are a sacramental community because we are a church community, and more particularly, we are a parish community. I remember once having a conversation with a few friars many years ago, and we were discussing this whole philosophical question: are Franciscans called to work in parishes at all? And I remember one friar who worked in a parish. He was a pastor, and he got very defensive and said, a parish is the only place where all seven sacraments are encountered, where all seven sacraments are nurtured and exist. And so that really explains to us the something about a parish community, that we are a place where encounter happens, and we are about the sacraments, and we cannot not be about the sacraments and be a parish. We are about service as well. We cannot be anything Christian and not be about service. We exist for the world. I've said that before in one of my earlier talks, that Vatican II just defined the church as existing for the world. And recently, in a talk that Bishop Robert Barron was given, he opened up this concept too, and spoke of the documents of Vatican II referring to the church's light, which is actually the light of Christ, not our own light, that we are called to let out. And that is the whole thrust of the church. We have something to share. And of course, as Pope Francis would lead us again to understand more profoundly, we have an evangelical mission to share. We have a reason to serve. We can't change that about ourselves. We exist for others, not for ourselves. We're not called to be self-referential. The third one is Franciscan, and of course, not every parish is Franciscan, but this one is. We are Franciscan right from our roots, right from our very beginnings, and we could try to wash that away, try to hide that, try to smother it, try to wipe that out of who we are, and we might eventually succeed, sure. But as it is, it's where we come from, and it's where we are. We're different. We are not your typical parish community. There's something about us. And I go back to our foundations, to our roots. In 1932, when Father Benedict Quigley came to the Japanese village, fishing village of Steveston forge, to set up a Catholic mission. Now, apparently the sisters came before, but I haven't found any history written on that yet. I'm sure it exists somewhere, but it's typical of the church. We give all the credit to men and women do all the work. Anyway, we're working on that. Uh, but they were Franciscan too, the sisters. So we came here, the friars came here, the Atonement Friars and Atonement Sisters came here because they were seeking a periphery. It was because of their Franciscan charism that they came to this place and came to the people who are here. And of course, you may know the story that the friars followed the Japanese into the internment camps. The OFMs, by the way, also worked in the internment camps at that time during the Second World War. Accompanied them, stayed with them as they lost their land, had it all ripped away from them. And I know we have some in our community who their families were here at that time and they've come back. It's a tragic story. It's a story of a peripheral people who were persecuted. And we're about that. We're about them, not about the persecution. We're about supporting those who are persecuted. We're about the peripheries. We're about minorities. And a lot of that really comes from the fact that we are Franciscan. We make a choice as a community to be who we are, to recognize that that is who we are and embrace it and allow that to be something that motivates us for good. Okay, so it's unique. We are unique in the Archdiocese of Vancouver. We are the only Franciscan parish. We're not the only parish that is staffed by a religious community, but I do believe that even if one day, and I don't even want to talk about that day, but one day when we Franciscan friars are no longer here and there's a diocesan priest running the place, if that ever happens, that our Franciscan roots is something that will still affect us. I don't think it's something we can erase too easily. Anyway, we therefore, with these foundations, sacramental foundations, which includes being about the Eucharist and gathering around the Word of God, our service foundations, our recognition of our calling to be about the world around us, about the world we're in, and our recognition that we are Franciscan as well and unique. We establish priorities that also impact and these foundations, and they become evident when we look at our priorities. We've established that we are an inclusive community. Well, inclusion leads to a sacramental life. If we don't invite children to be baptized, then we don't bring them nor their families to a sacramental life. So all of it is connected in that way. And faith formation too leads to a sacramental life. We form for the sacraments. We form for baptism, First Communion, First Reconciliation. We even form for marriage and confirmation, etc., etc., etc. Maybe we should work on forming for ordination. Okay, anyway. So our roots are also the fruits of our priorities. There's a dialogue that goes on there, including, let's move to faith formation and social justice. The overlap there is in service. Both are very much about service. I hope that our faith formation programs teach us about the essential importance of caring for the common good, of Christ's preferential option for the poor, and all of that. It's key. It's key to a Christian understanding of who we are. It leads us to action. Of course, our action is the fruits of our priority for social justice as well. So it goes the other way. And of course, there's the overlap between social justice and inclusive community, which is where the word Franciscan rises to the surface, because a particularly Franciscan charism, one that is inspired by St. Francis of Assisi, embraces the spirit of minority and not only dares to be humble, but to be concerned most, first and foremost, with those who are on the edge, those who are discarded, those who are both materially and spiritually poor. The spiritually poor is what Pope Francis refers to as the existentially poor. So, we could say those who are grieving, those who are wounded, those who are disabled, those who are on the periphery or longing to belong for any reason, such as those who suffer discrimination based on ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation. We consider the unborn peripheral, as well as single mothers, the unmarried, the confused young parents, those looking for support. How do I find time in my life to make it to church on Sunday? We are there for you. We hope we are there for you. That's our goal, our desire out of justice and care for the common good and inclusion, all of it together. The divorced, the widowed, the abused, the broken, even the vegetarians and the celiacs. Now, I'm celiac, so that really means something to me. The shut in, the airport workers, and the farm workers, bringing it really home locally here to our Richmond context. We are a very diverse community, but we are a community that not only includes and invites to belong, we are a community that has roots. And all of these things are what we are about. We are about encounter, therefore we are about sacraments. We are about the other, therefore we are about service. And we are Franciscan, just from our DNA. It is who we are. So I didn't answer this talk with a question, but if there was a question, it would be, what are our foundations? What are our roots? One of those two questions. And our roots are who we are. Our roots are sacrament, service, and Franciscan. These inspire us to live more deeply the gospel, to make priorities, to prioritize inclusion, faith formation, and social justice. Our roots, quite simply, are who we are as a Christian community.